Racist cops arrest black woman, stunned when she's the judge presiding over their case. Dark clouds loomed over the small city of Riverbourne that night, as if nature itself sensed the injustice unraveling in its streets. A routine traffic stop turned into a horrific show of power when two overzealous police officers arrested a black woman without cause. Little did they know, the same woman would soon sit on a bench in a courthouse bearing the state's seal, wielding the gavel that could change their lives forever. A single moment of blind prejudice set off a domino effect, catapulting them into a legal storm. Buckle up for a tale of drama, retribution, and the surprising twists of fate. Rihanna Patrice Santiago's earliest memories sprang from the wood-paneled hallways of the local courthouse in Atlanta, Georgia. As a 7-year-old, she was small enough to squeeze between the narrow benches reserved for the public during weekly hearings. Her mother, Dr. Loretta Santiago, had brought Rihanna along to observe the legal process and instill in her a deep respect for justice. Every once in a while, Rihanna would catch a glimpse of the robed judges, thinking they looked like grand wizards weaving spells of morality. Even at that young age, Rihanna felt a spark of awe. While other kids her age played hide and seek, Rihanna stayed up late, reading about groundbreaking cases in American history and rummaging through her mother's law journals from the days. Loretta pursued her Juris Doctor at Howard University School of Law. Loretta never became a practicing attorney. Life steered her toward academia, and she taught criminal justice at a local college, but she had passed on her intellectual vigor. Rihanna grew up on stories of Thurgood Marshall and Constance Baker Motley. She devoured articles about the tragic cases that shaped civil rights, and she never shied away from confronting big questions about systemic oppression. By the time Rihanna reached high school, she'd already volunteered at legal clinics, offering her time to administrative tasks. She wasn't old enough to give legal advice, but she organized documents, fetched coffee, and carefully eavesdropped on lawyers discussing motions and strategy. Everyone around her could see that Rihanna was a born litigator, fearless in her curiosity and insatiable in her desire to learn. Graduating at the top of her class, Rihanna won a scholarship to Spelman College, where she double majored in political science and philosophy. After that, she attended Georgetown Law, her acceptance letter a dream come true. Early on, Rihanna set her sights on one goal: to become a judge and ensure justice for those wronged by society. She carried with her a fierce determination to challenge the bigotry she had witnessed around her. Growing up, Rihanna had experienced more than her fair share of microaggressions, cashiers suspiciously eyeing her when she tried to buy something expensive, teachers doubting the originality of her stellar essays, or acquaintances implying she'd only been admitted to prestigious programs because of affirmative action. Each slight cut deep, but instead of letting bitterness consume her, Rihanna channeled every hurt into her relentless sense of purpose. After years of clerkships, private practice, and a stint as an assistant district attorney, Rihanna rose through the ranks. She earned a reputation as brilliant, tough, but fair. When the opportunity to become a judge opened in Riverbourne, a modest city overshadowed by bigger metropolitan areas, Rihanna didn't hesitate. She'd learned the greatest impact often came where resources were scarce and attention minimal. So, she packed her entire life into a few suitcases and moved west, determined to uphold justice for a new community. It was a humid night in Riverbourne. The flickering neon lights of corner stores cast shaky reflections on puddles that still lingered from the afternoon rain. Rihanna, newly appointed to the Riverbourne Municipal Court, had only been in town for a week, and her official robing ceremony was slated for the following Monday. Her credentials had been approved, bar memberships transferred, background checks completed, and her desk arranged. But the final public announcement was still under wraps. Until Monday, Rihanna was just another face in the crowd, albeit with an imposing intellect and unwavering sense of right and wrong. She had just finished dinner with her friend and colleague, Assistant District Attorney Alicia Thompson. The pair left savory bites, a small soul food spot Rihanna had discovered online, deciding to walk instead of drive. Rihanna wore a casual outfit, jeans, sneakers, and a loose-fitting sweatshirt. A baseball cap shielded her hair from the humidity. Even with minimal makeup, Rihanna's poise stood out. After dinner, Alicia offered to give Rihanna a lift back to her short-term rental, but Rihanna declined. She wanted to explore Riverbourne's quiet streets on foot. As she strolled past the closed boutiques and barbershops, Rihanna was lost in thought about the upcoming robed ceremony. She wondered if she'd feel that same childlike awe when the black robe draped over her shoulders. She pictured her mother smiling from the front row, proud tears in her eyes. The prospect of actually sitting on the bench, her bench seemed surreal. Lost in those reveries, Rihanna barely noticed the police cruiser creep up behind her. Its headlights illuminated the sidewalk, chasing her shadow forward. It wasn't until the siren blipped that she turned around, startled to see two uniformed officers. Officer Brian Riley was in the driver's seat, his partner, Officer Mark Daniels, riding shotgun. Both men had stern faces that showed no warmth or welcome. "Ma'am, can you stop right there?" Riley barked into the cruiser's loudspeaker, though Rihanna was only 10 feet away. Her heart kicked up, and the ingrained caution about police interactions set alarm bells ringing in her head. She paused on the sidewalk, raising her hands slightly to show she posed no threat. She'd studied the many tragedies that began with a so-called routine stop. The names of Tamir Rice and Sandra Bland echoed in her memory. She was intimately familiar with how quickly these encounters could escalate. Keeping calm, Rihanna took a deep breath and forced the tension from her shoulders. "Is everything all right, officer?" she asked politely, voice steady. She could already sense the energy in the air, thick with tension. The men didn't respond at first. Instead, they got out of the cruiser, approached her slowly, hands resting ominously on their holstered weapons. One glance at their eyes told Rihanna everything she needed to know. They suspected her of something simply because of her skin color. "What's your name? And what are you doing out here?" Daniels asked. He towered a few inches above Rihanna, trying to appear intimidating. She calmly stated, "My name is Rihanna Santiago. I'm walking home from dinner. Is there a problem?" Riley narrowed his eyes. "We got a call about a suspicious person wandering around these parts, looking into storefronts." "You match the description." Rihanna's insides clenched. Suspicious? She had simply passed a couple of darkened shops, glancing at their closed signs. The city was mostly empty this time of night, shops closed early in Riverbourne. But Rihanna knew better than to argue from a place of anger. She kept her voice measured. "I'm just walking, officers. I haven't trespassed or committed any crime. That's not what we heard." Daniel's tone slid into condescension. "We got a call that you were looking in windows, potentially planning a break-in." Rihanna resisted the urge to roll her eyes. "I'd be happy to answer any questions, but ID." "Now," Riley interrupted. He looked ready to escalate at the slightest hint of defiance. She had a right to ask why they needed it, but Rihanna chose to comply quickly, not wanting to push her luck. She reached carefully into her pocket. "I'm getting my wallet," she said in a clear voice, making sure they both saw her slow movements. The last thing she wanted was for them to claim she was reaching for a weapon. Her wallet contained a Georgia driver's license, her Bar Association card, and a newly issued ID from the Riverbourne Municipal Court. However, that official ID stated her position without specifying her bench appointment. She handed them the license, but held back the court ID. She wasn't sure how revealing her new position would play out, and she didn't want to incite more hostility. Officer Daniels examined the license, flipping it around as if seeking something suspicious. Georgia, huh? Long way from home. Why are you here in Riverbourne? Rihanna hesitated. She didn't want to lie. I've moved here for work, she said simply. What sort of work? Riley inquired, scanning her from head to toe as though she was lying. I'm an attorney, Rihanna answered, hoping that might quell their suspicions. However, if anything, the revelation seemed to heighten their skepticism. Attorney, huh? Daniel sneered. We've heard that one before. Rihanna realized the alarm bells in her mind had been right. These officers had come primed with bias. They'd already decided she was suspicious before she even spoke. You can run my license if you want to check anything, she offered. A mocking glint appeared in Riley's eyes. Oh, we will. Stay right where you are. They retreated to the cruiser, leaving Rihanna under the harsh glow of the street lamp. The minutes dragged, and Rihanna felt her anxiety surge. She'd done nothing wrong, but that hardly mattered if these officers decided to escalate. She recalled her mother's stern advice. Stay calm, be courteous, don't give them any reason to fear you. Rihanna was well aware that fear was lethal when combined with racism. Finally, Riley and Daniels returned, but they didn't give her license back. Instead, Riley said, "We want to do a quick search. Mind turning out your pockets?" Rihanna steeled herself. "Officers, am I being detained?" Daniels pursed his lips. "We have reason to believe you could be in possession of burglary tools. We got the call, and we're following protocol." That was an obvious pretext. Rihanna had no tools, no bags, nothing. She was carrying only her phone and wallet. Still, she recognized the precariousness of the situation. "This is an unlawful search," she began, but Riley cut her off by grabbing her wrist. Rihanna's instincts roared. She jerked back. "Don't touch me," she snapped, adrenaline pumping. But that minor resistance set them off. Riley twisted her arm behind her back, while Daniels forcefully pressed her against the police cruiser. Despite Rihanna's pleas, they handcuffed her, ignoring her protests about civil rights violations. Her eyes pricked with tears of rage and humiliation. In that moment, Rihanna understood the terrible position she was in, a powerless civilian in the eyes of these officers. Despite all her legal knowledge, neither of them had recognized her name from the court staff rosters. She was simply a black woman on the street at night, and that made her a target. They shoved her into the back of the cruiser. Her reflection in the barred window stared back, wide-eyed with shock. How had a simple walk home ended in police custody? Rihanna's mind whirled with the potential fallout. She was an attorney, soon to be a judge. Even if she posted bail quickly, this arrest would leave a mark unless she fought it. More pressing, these men had violated her rights. The logic that she had done nothing wrong offered little comfort. Innocence alone didn't always guarantee safety. As they drove toward the police station, Rihanna steadied herself. She knew from experience that fear, while natural, could cloud judgment. She needed to remain clear-headed. She would call the district attorney's office. She would call the presiding judge's chambers. She would fix this. For the time being, though, Rihanna was at the mercy of two officers who seemed hell-bent on teaching just another suspicious black woman a lesson. Once they arrived at the station, Rihanna expected some semblance of due process. Instead, she was taken to a holding cell in the back, the concrete walls stained with old graffiti and decades of desperation. The faint smell of bleach mingled with stale sweat. Her heart raced, but she forced her breathing to slow. She had to keep her composure. Officer Daniels made a show of removing her belongings while Riley watched. When Rihanna tried to explain her status as a newly appointed member of the court, they mocked her. "Sure, you're a big-shot lawyer," Riley said, smirking. "We've heard that story before." "I'm telling you the truth," Rihanna insisted, but her words fell on deaf ears. No phone call was granted. No attempt to verify her story was made. The next few hours crawled by in a haze. Rihanna was outraged and afraid. She questioned how these men could so brazenly ignore her constitutional rights. Even a cursory check of her background would prove she was who she claimed. But Rihanna also knew that the station's computers were at their disposal. If they had checked, they were deliberately ignoring the facts. Or perhaps it hadn't even occurred to them that the background they'd find was impeccable. No arrests, no warrants, no criminal history. Maybe they just didn't care. She sat on a cold metal bench, hugging herself against the chill, trying to mentally rehearse every legal action she'd take once freed. She had to ensure these officers were held accountable. Rihanna thought of her mother's heartbreak when she found out how her daughter was treated, and Rihanna's own sense of professional shame for being put in such a degrading position her very first week in Riverbourne. Eventually, a female officer, Sergeant Linda Kay, approached the cell with cautious sympathy in her eyes. She had light brown hair pulled into a neat bun, and her uniform was more worn than the pristine garments Riley and Daniels wore, suggesting many years of service. "Ma'am, could you give me some information?" Sergeant Kay asked softly. "I want to clarify a few details." Rihanna felt a glimmer of hope. "Of course, my name is Rihanna Patrice Santiago. I recently moved here from Atlanta, Georgia. My new position is..." Kay held up a hand. "I know. I just got off the phone with Alicia Thompson from the DA's office. She's heading down here. Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" Rihanna swallowed her fury. "I'm fine physically," she answered, though her wrists ached from the cuffs. "I'd like to leave this cell now. I assume you've confirmed who I am." Sergeant Kay gave a curt nod. "Yes, Miss Santiago. I'm sorry. Officers Riley and Daniels." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "They arrested you on suspicion of burglary, but there was no evidence, and from what I can see, they didn't handle this with proper protocol. We'll get you out as soon as the paperwork is reversed." Relief washed over Rihanna, albeit laced with anger. Part of her yearned to lash out. But Rihanna's professionalism took over. She knew that once her new position was officially recognized, these officers would face severe repercussions. For now, Rihanna was mostly relieved that Alicia was on her way. Alicia, who knew the new judicial appointment intimately, would sort out the immediate crisis. Sure enough, Alicia burst into the station a few minutes later, her professional heels clacking violently on the tile floor. She demanded Rihanna's release in no uncertain terms, brandishing documents verifying Rihanna's identity and role. A flurry of bureaucratic chaos followed. The watch commander stammered apologies. Sergeant Kay led Rihanna out, returning her belongings. Meanwhile, Riley and Daniels hung back, watching from a distance, perplexed by the sudden hullabaloo. Rihanna guessed that only now did they realize the gravity of their mistake. Once freed, Rihanna stood face to face with Riley and Daniels, her eyes narrowed. She refused to let them see her tears of humiliation. "I'll see you both again," she declared evenly, her voice dripping with the promise of consequences. There was no need for further explanation. She and Alicia turned and walked out, leaving behind a station that felt colder and more menacing than anything Rihanna had imagined. Outside, the night air kissed Rihanna's cheeks, bringing her a bittersweet sense of freedom. She glanced back at the police station's glaring lights. She thought of all the black men and women who hadn't had a friend like Alicia or a legal position of power to rescue them. Rihanna vowed, then and there, that these men would not walk away unscathed. Her vow was about more than personal retribution. It was about ensuring that the institutional culture enabling officers like Riley and Daniels would not remain unchallenged. Alicia drove Rihanna home in silence for the first few minutes. Sensing Rihanna's restrained rage, Alicia reached out and gently squeezed her hand. "I am so sorry you went through that. If I'd known, I'm grateful you came," Rihanna said softly, her voice breaking for the first time that night. Letting out a shaky exhale, she continued, I should have called you right away, but I couldn't get a phone call. Alicia clenched the steering wheel. That's a violation, Rihanna, and we both know it. Riley and Daniels have a history of questionable stops, but this is a new low even for them. Rihanna's eyes narrowed. You mean there have been complaints before? Multiple, though none led to official charges. All got swept under the rug, Alicia explained, stopping at a red light. But they messed with the wrong person tonight. I'm not letting it go this time. Rihanna sighed, leaning her head against the passenger window, exhaustion creeping in. She replayed the moment Riley grabbed her wrist, pinning it behind her back. Her stomach churned. She thought about all the others who'd been through similar or worse experiences, lacking the resources or connections to fight back. This is exactly what Rihanna had pledged her life to combat. The next day brought a phone call from Chief Magistrate Ronald Bradley, Rihanna's soon-to-be colleague. He apologized profusely. This should never have happened, Bradley insisted. I've spoken with Chief of Police Miranda Lopez. She's going to handle the matter internally. Rest assured, Rihanna, we take this very seriously. You have our full support. Despite his sincerity, Rihanna sensed an undercurrent of caution, like the system was more interested in damage control than genuine accountability. She tried to remain hopeful. After all, she was about to become a judge, and she'd have a platform to address institutional problems from the inside out. On Monday, Rihanna's robing ceremony took place in a half-filled courtroom, overshadowed by the scandal. The local press had caught wind of her ordeal, and whispers ran rampant through City Hall. Did you hear? The new judge was arrested? Rihanna refused to let the gossip taint her celebration. Her mother stood proudly beside her, while Rihanna swore the oath of office. With a black robe over her shoulders and a sense of righteous conviction fueling her, Rihanna felt invincible. As soon as she was sworn in, Rihanna requested a closed-door meeting with Chief of Police Miranda Lopez and the Internal Affairs Division. She wanted to be sure there was a formal investigation into the arrest. Miranda Lopez, a Latina woman who had climbed the ranks against plenty of adversity herself, expressed contrition. She admitted Riley and Daniels were under scrutiny for previous complaints, but insisted an official inquiry would follow due process. Rihanna demanded transparency, but the chief could only promise to handle it. Frustration simmered within Rihanna. So often, these investigations ended with mild discipline or no action at all. But Rihanna had an ace up her sleeve, the legal system, which she now partially oversaw. For the time being, Rihanna decided to wait, to trust the system she was a part of. She had no intention of letting the issue drop. Riley and Daniels would learn that accountability in her jurisdiction was not a hollow word. 2 weeks after Rihanna's appointment, the Riverbourne District Attorney's Office filed official misconduct charges against Riley and Daniels. Alicia Thompson had drafted a thorough complaint: unlawful detention, excessive force, and violating Rihanna's constitutional right to due process. Although Rihanna was the victim, she had to remove herself from any direct involvement in the early investigative phase to avoid accusations of bias. Instead, Alicia spearheaded the prosecutorial angle. When the complaint became public, the city erupted with mixed reactions. Civil rights groups demanded the officers be fired immediately. Certain segments of the police union rallied to defend them, painting Rihanna as overly sensitive and out for revenge. The local news channels replayed Rihanna's arrest story nightly, showing Rihanna in her robe side by side with Riley and Daniels' mugshots. Tensions soared. Rumors circulated that Rihanna was using her new position to push a personal vendetta. A handful of protesters camped outside the courthouse, carrying signs that read, "We stand with our officers," while others took to social media with the hashtag Justice for Rihanna. During this uproar, Rihanna tried to focus on her daily docket: small claims, misdemeanors, traffic violations. The last thing she expected was to see Riley and Daniels appear before her bench, but fate had other plans. One Monday morning, Rihanna scanned the schedule. Nestled among the usual low-level criminal cases was State versus Brian Riley and Mark Daniels. Her pulse skittered. Was this a mistake? She called her clerk into chambers to confirm. Indeed, it was correct. Because of the backlog and rotation schedule, the officer's first hearing and arraignment on charges of official misconduct had fallen on Rihanna's calendar. She faced a dilemma. In standard procedure, a judge who is the victim in a case would recuse herself. Rihanna expected to be disqualified by default. Yet, no such directive came. The local judicial administration was so clogged, and most of the other judges had scheduling conflicts or were recused for having prior dealings with Riley and Daniels. Rihanna braced herself for how the defense counsel might respond. Typically, they'd file a motion to reassign the case to another judge. However, the city was short-staffed, especially after 2 judges had recently retired. Rihanna had a suspicion that if the defense tried to move the case to a new judge, the hearing date would be pushed back months, leaving the case in limbo. That Monday, Rihanna wrapped her robe around her shoulders and took the bench in a packed courtroom. People were standing against the back wall, craning their necks to witness the spectacle. As the defendants' names were called, Riley and Daniels marched in, their eyes locked with Rihanna's in stunned recognition. The bailiff intoned, "Your Honor, calling case number 2587, the State of Riverbourne versus Brian Riley and Mark Daniels." Time slowed for Rihanna. She recalled the roughness of Riley's grip, the clang of the cell door, the mocking laughter in their eyes. But Rihanna was more than her anger. She was a judge, sworn to uphold the law impartially. That vow echoed in her mind. "I do solemnly swear." She forced the memories aside and addressed the courtroom. "Ahem," she cleared her throat. "State your appearances." Alicia stood. Alicia Thompson, Assistant District Attorney for the state, Your Honor. A tall, silver-haired attorney named Jordan Underwood rose for the defense. Jordan Underwood, representing officers Brian Riley and Mark Daniels. Rihanna's voice remained steady. The defendants are charged with official misconduct, unlawful detention, and excessive force. Are your clients prepared to enter a plea? Underwood, in an impeccably tailored suit, glanced at Rihanna. "Before we do that, Your Honor, the defense wishes to address a matter of judicial recusal." The tension in the room thickened, spectators leaning in. Rihanna folded her hands on the bench. "Go ahead, Counselor." Underwood smoothed his tie. "Your Honor, you are personally the alleged victim in this case. We submit that, under these circumstances, your impartiality might reasonably be questioned, and we respectfully request reassignment to another judge." A hush fell. Rihanna took a deep breath. This was no surprise. "Mr. Underwood, I appreciate your concern. However, as you're aware, the entire bench of Riverbourne has encountered a series of conflicting cases. For expedience, the case was assigned to me. I am ready to hear arguments regarding recusal." Alicia jumped in. "Your Honor, the state argues that at this stage an arraignment, there is no conflict in proceeding. If a trial is necessary, we can revisit the recusal question. However, immediate recusal will cause significant delay. These charges are a matter of urgent public interest." Underwood scoffed. "The defendants have a constitutional right to a fair trial, Miss Thompson, not to a rushed one. We demand a judge who is not a material witness." Rihanna weighed the arguments. Strictly by the book, Underwood was correct. Rihanna was more than a material witness. She was the complainant. But Rihanna also understood how these requests could drag on. The charges would languish. She decided to do what was within her ethical bounds, preside over the arraignment alone, then promptly reassign the trial to a visiting judge. That much she could do. "I've considered the defense's motion," she said. "Given my personal involvement, I will recuse myself from any evidentiary hearings or the trial itself. However, I see no reason why I cannot handle the ministerial task of arraignment today. The trial assignment can be made after I accept or reject the pleas. If the defense wishes to object further, they may file a written motion." Underwood grimaced but nodded. "Understood, Your Honor," Rihanna asked. "How do the defendants plead?" Both officers rose. "Not guilty," they said in unison, faces stoic. She set the next hearing date, stating that the matter of trial assignment would be resolved by the judicial administration. Then Rihanna concluded, "Bail is set at $25,000 each, subject to standard conditions. Court is adjourned." As Rihanna's gavel fell, Riley locked eyes with her, the hatred in his stare palpable. But Rihanna stared back calmly, her posture unyielding. She wasn't the frightened woman he'd shoved into a cruiser 2 weeks earlier. She was the judge, his judge, at least for that day. Though Rihanna knew she would step aside for the main trial, she relished the irony. Riley and Daniels forced to stand before her, forced to hear the charges against them, read aloud, forced to answer to the very person they deemed unworthy of basic respect. The media erupted after the arraignment. Judge Rihanna Santiago presides over officers who arrested her, screamed one headline from the Riverbourne Daily. Evening news broadcasts featured Rihanna's poised figure on the bench, recounting the tension in the courtroom. Interviews with local residents captured the city's divided sentiment. "This is justice in action," said some, while others condemned Rihanna for conflict of interest and bias. Protesters clogged the sidewalks outside the courthouse. The local Fraternal Order of Police led a small rally proclaiming Riley and Daniels' innocence, painting Rihanna as a tyrant abusing her new power. On the other side, local civil rights activists praised Rihanna's integrity, insisting that these officers had a known pattern of racism and brutality. Rihanna's name became a lightning rod for the community's simmering racial tensions and issues of police accountability. Privately, Rihanna wrestled with the complexity. The last thing she wanted was to become the face of a public spectacle. She had come to Riverbourne to quietly serve justice, not to star in a media circus. Nevertheless, she could not hide from what had happened. She had been personally wronged, but her case also represented a broader system of oppression faced by countless people who lacked her resources. Rihanna felt a moral duty to ensure the truth came out. That sense of duty clashed with her new judicial responsibilities. Her docket was heavy, with many defendants waiting on her rulings. Each day, Rihanna strove to maintain fairness, to treat every litigant with dignity. She listened carefully to arguments, read legal briefs meticulously, and made reasoned decisions. Rumors swirled that Rihanna was gunning for crooked officers, that she was soft on minority defendants. But Rihanna didn't let the chatter deter her. She doled out judgments based on facts, not hearsay. A month passed, and Rihanna focused on her cases. Meanwhile, Alicia built her prosecution against Riley and Daniels. In mid-October, Rihanna learned that the administrative office had chosen a visiting judge, Marion Fields, to preside over the trial. Judge Fields was from a neighboring county, known for her no-nonsense approach. The trial was set for November. One crisp autumn afternoon, Rihanna was in her chambers, sorting through a mountain of documents, when Alicia knocked at the door. She entered, wearing a triumphant smile. "We've got a big break," she announced. Rihanna raised an eyebrow. "Regarding Riley and Daniels?" "Yes," Alicia said, barely containing her excitement. Internal Affairs found dash-cam footage that completely contradicts Riley's initial arrest report. It shows Rihanna calmly talking, not resisting. It shows them forcibly restraining her when she's clearly compliant. Plus, they found multiple prior complaints from citizens Black, Latino, white, detailing similar abuses. "The pattern is damning, Rihanna. They're not just guilty of racism, they're bullies with badges. Rihanna's heart pounded. This evidence could finally bring them to justice, not just for her case, but for the countless others who never got a fair hearing. "This is great news," Rihanna breathed. Alicia's grin widened. "We're adding the dashcam footage as key evidence. If the defense tries to strike it, I'll fight them tooth and nail. This changes everything. The officers could face prison time, Rihanna. Real consequences." A swirl of emotions left Rihanna both relieved and uneasy. She wanted accountability, absolutely. Yet, she also felt a pang of sadness. Two men were risking their futures because they chose to act on prejudice and abuse their power. They could have changed course at any time. They could have listened when Rihanna told them she was a lawyer, but they didn't. Now they might lose everything. "Stay strong, Rihanna," Alicia said gently, reading her expression. "We'll handle this. You just keep doing what you do best, administer justice from the bench. Let me take care of Riley and Daniels in the prosecution." Rihanna nodded, grateful for Alicia's unwavering support. That night, as Rihanna left the courthouse, she gazed up at the stately columns and thought of all the steps it had taken for her to stand on the other side of that bench. She whispered a silent vow. She would see this through to the end, no matter how messy it got. As the trial date approached, Jordan Underwood, the defense attorney, launched a media campaign to salvage Riley and Daniels' reputation. He called press conferences, accusing Alicia of political motivations and Rihanna of orchestrating a witch hunt. Underwood claimed the officers feared for their safety during the arrest, alleging Rihanna had resisted and threatened them. The local news broadcast these statements without much context, fueling public contention. Privately, Rihanna worried that Riley and Daniels might plant false stories or manipulate evidence. She confided in Alicia, who assured her that the dashcam footage was indisputable. "It shows everything," Alicia said confidently. "No jury will buy their lies once they see the video. And we have additional witness statements from bystanders who saw them push you into the cruiser. Even the 911 call from that night is fishy. It came from an anonymous source, with no actual evidence of a break-in." But Rihanna sensed there was more to uncover. The arrest had been too abrupt, too brazen. Who made that anonymous call? It almost seemed like Riley and Daniels were patrolling with an agenda, looking for a target. Rihanna worried that the so-called anonymous caller might be tied to them or a ring of officers who supported their methods. In the weeks leading up to the trial, Alicia's investigators worked to trace the origin of the suspicious 911 call. The call log showed it was placed from a burner phone. No registration, no known user. They retrieved partial cell tower data, placing the caller in the same quadrant of Riverbourne at that time. It was inconclusive, but Rihanna suspected Riley or Daniels themselves could have made the call, setting up a pretext to harass a random black person in the area. Then a bombshell arrived. An analyst from the police department's dispatch center discovered that the 911 line was never properly completed, meaning no official dispatch was truly created after the call. The system logs indicated a hang-up that never advanced to a full complaint. Yet, Riley and Daniels told Rihanna they were responding to a call. That meant they lied from the start. The next question was, why? Whispers inside the department suggested Riley and Daniels had a vile habit of fishing for easy arrests to boost their track record. They'd stop unsuspecting individuals, especially people of color, hoping to find minor offenses, a joint in the pocket, an outstanding warrant, or anything that could turn into an arrest. That night, Rihanna happened to be their target of opportunity. Armed with this new evidence, Alicia prepared a devastating case. Rihanna, while not testifying, was still the central figure. She dreaded the spotlight, but reminded herself that she represented not only her own dignity, but the principle that no one is above the law. On a chilly November morning, A line of onlookers snaked around the courthouse block. Judge Marion Fields had come to preside, and she wasted no time establishing her authority. A stern woman with salt and pepper hair, Fields addressed the gallery. "This is a court of law, not a spectacle. Any disruptions will be dealt with immediately." Riley and Daniels, both dressed in dark suits, sat at the defense table, flanked by Underwood. Alicia arrived with her team, accompanied by Rihanna's mother, who stood in quiet support. Though Rihanna was not required to attend, she chose to be present, seated in the public section to witness the proceedings. Alicia's opening statement was meticulous. She recounted Rihanna's credentials, the events of that night, the dashcam footage. She described how the officers had no legitimate call, how they forcibly searched Rihanna without probable cause, how they intentionally withheld her rights. Each detail hammered the narrative of abuse of power. Underwood's statement offered a stark contrast. He argued that Rihanna's aggressive demeanor had made the officers fear for their safety. He painted Rihanna as someone with political aspirations, implying she turned the arrest into a personal crusade once she realized she could use it to her advantage. The claim rang hollow, but it was enough to plant doubt in the minds of any jury members prone to trust law enforcement. Then came the evidence. The prosecution played the dashcam video in open court. Tense silence reigned as the footage showed Rihanna calmly speaking with Riley and Daniels, with no sign of aggression on her part. Then the video showed Riley's abrupt hand grab, twisting Rihanna's arm behind her back. Gasps spread through the gallery. The footage also caught Daniels' mocking tone as he shoved Rihanna into the cruiser. The short clip ended with Rihanna's muffled pleas about her rights being ignored. In cross-examination, Underwood attempted to spin the footage, pointing out that the camera angle wasn't perfect, but the damage was done. The stark visuals told the story better than any words. A parade of witnesses testified next. Sergeant Linda Kay confirmed Rihanna's professional demeanor when she encountered her at the station. The dispatch center's IT analyst testified about the Phantom 911 call. Various civilians recounted how Riley and Daniels had treated them in the past, harsh language, suspicious stops. Each testimony drove another nail into the defense's coffin. Underwood tried to punch back by highlighting Rihanna's high-profile job, claiming her story was self-serving. He questioned whether Rihanna had used clout to fast-track the arrest charges. But Alicia swiftly dismantled that argument, showing that the internal investigation had begun independently, spurred by Kay and the watch commander's concerns. As the trial neared its end, the public was riveted. Local bars had televisions tuned to coverage. Protesters still thronged outside, but the mood was shifting. Many realized that Riley and Daniels had lied, that Rihanna's story held up under scrutiny. After nearly a week of testimony, Judge Fields sent the jury to deliberate. They returned faster than expected, within 4 hours. Rihanna, seated in the gallery, felt her heart drum wildly. Whatever the outcome, this moment would reverberate through Riverbourne. The jury foreperson rose, holding a slip of paper. "We, the jury, find the defendants Brian Riley and Mark Daniels guilty on all counts of official misconduct, unlawful detention, and use of excessive force." A roar of commotion rippled through the courtroom. Judge Fields banged her gavel sharply. The defendants' faces paled, Underwood's jaw clenched in defeat. Alicia shared a glance with Rihanna, relief flooding them both. This was real accountability, a rare triumph against systemic abuse. Judge Fields set the sentencing date 2 weeks later. That day came, and Rihanna again attended, wanting closure. The courtroom was tense as Riley and Daniels, now disgraced, listened to the judge's scathing condemnation of their actions. "You wore the badge as a sacred trust," Judge Fields intoned. You betrayed that trust by targeting a citizen without probable cause, using force unnecessarily and endangering the integrity of our justice system. In no society can this be tolerated. With that, Judge Field sentenced each officer to 18 months in prison, plus probation and mandatory counseling. The shock was palpable. Police officers rarely served time for misconduct, especially not in small cities where the police union held sway. But Field's pronouncement made it clear the time for lenience was over. As they were led away in handcuffs, Rihanna watched. She felt no triumph in their downfall, only a grim satisfaction that justice had been served. Riley caught her eye, raw fury glinting in his stare. She imagined him replaying their fateful night and cursing the chain of events that led him here. Daniels merely looked shell-shocked, as though he couldn't grasp the severity of the outcome. Outside, Rihanna faced a swarm of reporters. Microphones and cameras were thrust in her face. "Judge Santiago, how do you feel about the verdict?" asked one reporter. "Do you believe justice was done?" cried another. Rihanna inhaled and gave a measured response. "Justice was served by a fair trial and an impartial jury. I ask the community to remember that this wasn't just about me, it was about upholding the law for everyone. We should never tolerate abuses of power, regardless of who the target is. I hope Riverbourne can move forward, repairing trust between citizens and law enforcement." Her words were replayed on the evening news, and Rihanna became a local icon of moral fortitude. Some hailed her as a hero, others reviled her. But Rihanna didn't concern herself with public adoration or scorn. She had done her duty both as a victim demanding accountability and as a judge committed to justice. In the following weeks, the city of Riverbourne experienced a turbulent transition. The police department underwent a thorough internal review. Some officers resigned, others were reassigned, and new training programs were instituted, focusing on de-escalation and cultural competency. Chief Miranda Lopez publicly acknowledged systemic failures and vowed to do better. Rihanna returned to her daily judicial responsibilities, refusing interviews and turning down offers from national media outlets. She just wanted to be the best judge she could be, focusing on cases that ranged from petty theft to civil disputes, guided by the same principle, fairness under the law. Her personal life began to heal too. The trauma of the wrongful arrest still haunted her nightmares, but therapy sessions and the unwavering support of her mother, Alicia, and new friends in Riverbourne helped. Rihanna found solace in Sunday morning strolls through the farmer's market, her robed figure replaced by casual jeans as she enjoyed local produce and friendly small talk. At these markets, people recognized her, offering handshakes or small words of gratitude. One chilly Saturday, Rihanna volunteered at a free legal clinic to help low-income residents navigate housing disputes. A young black mother approached, hesitance in her eyes. "Judge Santiago," she asked shyly, "I just wanted to say thank you, not just for what you did for yourself, but for all of us who've been profiled and harassed. It means a lot." Rihanna felt a lump in her throat. "Thank you for saying that. I hope you never have to face what I did." She realized in that moment how far-reaching the impact of her stand against Riley and Daniels was. Her case had shown that the system can work, but it needed people willing to risk their comfort and reputation to demand accountability. While Rihanna knew corruption and prejudice wouldn't vanish overnight, she took solace in the knowledge that she had shaken the old structures. The city, once complacent, was now stirred into action. 3 months after the trial, Rihanna was back in her chambers, presiding over a docket of small civil cases. At noon, she took a break, slipping into the corridor to stretch her legs. She passed by courtroom 2, where a group of new police recruits were attending a legal orientation. Sergeant Linda Kay was conducting the session. And remember, Kay's voice echoed, an arrest must be supported by reasonable suspicion and probable cause. Abusing your power will not be tolerated. Ask yourselves if you want to serve the community or suppress it. Rihanna paused, listening. A faint smile curved her lips. The seeds of change were taking root. Maybe, just maybe, Riverbourne would become an example of how a city can learn from its mistakes. She returned to her bench with renewed resolve, carrying her gavel like a torch in the ongoing battle for justice. No single case could eradicate systemic racism in policing, but Rihanna's journey proved that, given enough courage and perseverance, a single moment of accountability could ripple far beyond itself. This emotional journey revealed how a grave injustice sparked one woman's unwavering resolve to champion a fairer system. Through Rihanna Santiago's trials, we witnessed the tangled roots of institutional failings, the towering courage it takes to confront them, and the electrifying moment when those who wronged her had to face the very judge they once underestimated. If the ups and downs of this story resonated with you, whether it moved you, inspired you, or made you think your support can make a difference, please hit the like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to my channel so you'll never miss a new story. Let's keep shining a light on injustice and demanding real accountability. Together, we can uphold the ideals of truth, fairness, and hope. Your presence here matters, and I'm grateful for every step you've taken alongside me on this path.